As this court is aware, this was a senseless and violent act that ended in the murder of a young man, Yaseen Johnson, who had not even had an opportunity to get out in the world and start his life. This defendant set out that day to rob him and ultimately murdered him over a pair of shoes and a few $100s. This is a negotiated settlement, as the court is aware. I've had a chance, Mr. Paquette and I have had a chance to review the PSI. We don't have any additions or corrections to that, Your Honor. Obviously, you've heard the impact that this has had on the family. It's had an impact on this whole community. I'm asking you to sentence in accordance with the negotiation that we reached today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ware.
Ms. Van Beek, Ms. Johnson.
I apologize. I should also note there is a request for restitution in the amount of $8,500 for the Crime Victim Reparations Board for money they paid out to the family for funeral expenses. And I have submitted the proposed order and documentation to your staff for that.
I have the order.
Van Beek, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, in regards to the restitution, I would just ask that when the co-defendant is sentenced, that he be sentenced joint and several in that restitution. I don't think Mr. Sirleaf is solely responsible for that. And I think that makes sense given the status of the cases. The first thing, Your Honor, that I want to address is some comments that Mr. Sirleaf made in the PSI, because I know they're obviously on the record, that the court has seen them, but I think it's important for it to be on this record as well. When asked about the offense, Mr. Sirleaf ended the description of what happened by noting, "This is not what I intended. I wish I could take it back. I did not want this to happen. I would tell his family how truly sorry I am, and I know I was wrong, and I'm going to do my time and better myself as a person." Mr. Sirleaf was 19 years old when this offense happened. What we know from science and psychology is that a 19-year-old does not fully have his prefrontal cortex available to him, which means that when Mr. Sirleaf was making split-second decisions, as he was in this case, he was not using logic, he was not using facts, he was using emotion. That's important, Your Honor, because Mr. Johnson had a gun in this case, and although after going through this repeatedly with Mr. Sirleaf, he agrees that he did not have a right to self-defense, and hence why he pled guilty. Your Honor, I think it's also important to note that he was reacting with emotion and not with logic or fact. And unfortunately, that emotion has led us to here today, where we are at a sentencing and Mr. Sirleaf is facing a significant amount of time that will take up most of his young adulthood. I would also note in Mr. Sirleaf's life, one of the things I've noted is that Mr. Johnson has a huge community around him, as we've seen today. Mr. Sirleaf did not have that benefit. He often described himself as lonely and isolated. His father was abusive and not in the picture. His mother is not here today, and I can attest from some of the conversations that we've had with her throughout the course of this, she maybe wasn't the most well-adjusted mom she could have been as well. Mr. Sirleaf was expected to raise himself, to raise his siblings, and I think he took it he internalized his need to provide for his family. And unfortunately, that's what led to today. I do think, Your Honor, that Mr. Sirleaf, in our conversations with him, has shown immense regret about how this went down. I think if he went back and did this all over again, this would be a very different situation. But unfortunately, that's not where we're at. We have to deal with the facts as they are. And because of that, Mr. Sirleaf is going to do a substantial amount of time. I would ask the court to follow the plea negotiation. And I would ask the court to recognize, or at least hear, that I think Mr. Sirleaf's remorse is sincere, that his family history is rough, and that I think everybody here can recognize, but this is a tragedy for every single person involved in this. Thank you.
Mr. Sirleaf, would you approach the podium, sir? Sir, is there anything you'd like to say before I sentence you?
I'm truly sorry to the family. I never intended for any of this to happen. I know it's a tough loss, and that's not who I am as a person. You know, I never intended to hurt nobody. That's not who I am as a person, and I'm truly sorry. And I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me as a person.
Thank you for those remarks, Mr. Sirleaf. All right, Augustus Matthew Sirleaf, having pled guilty to murder in the second degree in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19, subdivision 1, close paren 1, I hereby convict you of that offense and sentence you to the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 276 months. Against that sentence, I will give you credit for the 411 days that you have already served. I order that you be restricted from the possession of firearms, waive all fines, fees, and surcharges, and order that you pay restitution in the amount of $8,500, and I'll order that you be taken into custody and remanded to the Commissioner of Corrections at this time. Good luck to you, sir. Thank you, counsel.
Yeah, Your Honor, just to clarify, is that restitution going to be ordered joint and several with the co-defendant?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes this proceeding.